You already know how it opens. An engine catching, a call to hit the road. NASA has used the song to wake astronauts aboard the Space Shuttle, and Mission Control has played it for rover teams celebrating a landing on Mars. It roars out of speakers at biker rallies from Sturgis to Daytona. It still shows up in Super Bowl commercials more than half a century after it was recorded. 6 decades on, it remains one of the most licensed recordings in rock history. Almost nobody knows this part. The man who wrote it says he'd never even ridden a motorcycle in his life. The truth is, Mars Bonfire admitted years later, I wrote Born to Be Wild about my first car, a beat-up Ford Falcon, and he wasn't in the band that made it famous. He'd quit before they ever set foot in a studio together. He wasn't even in the room when Steppenwolf recorded it, an accidental anthem written by an outsider about a used car for a band he'd left behind. It would go on to define, enrich, and ultimately trap the band that turned it into a legend. If you enjoy stories like this, hit subscribe. There's more where this came from. Autumn 1967. A Canadian band called Sparrow is stranded in Los Angeles. Broke, going nowhere. Their frontman is a young man named John Kay, born Joachim Fritz Krauladad, a refugee who crossed from East to West Germany with his family while he was still a boy, years before eventually emigrating to Canada. He taught himself English listening to American Forces radio and rock and roll stations bleeding across the border at night, the sound of a world he was determined to reach. That hunger for something bigger than his surroundings would define the next chapter of his life. Sparrow had burned through half a continent chasing a break. They'd started in Oshawa, Ontario, moved to Toronto's Yorkville folk scene, drifted to San Francisco during the Summer of Love, landed, finally, on LA's Sunset Strip. Columbia Records signed them. Their singles flopped anyway. By late 1967, Sparrow was finished. Band members sleeping in borrowed cars, scraping together gas money between gigs that barely paid. They'd played whatever rooms would have them along the way, building a following that never quite turned into a deal that stuck. Then fate did something small and strange. Kay's next-door neighbor happened to be Gabriel Meckler, a staff producer at Dunhill Records. Meckler had just finished reading a novel by Hermann Hesse about a man who felt like an outsider wherever he went. He suggested Kay reassemble the band under the book's title, Steppenwolf. It was, in hindsight, one of the strangest bits of luck in the band's entire history. A neighbor with the right book at exactly the right moment, and it turned out, a fitting name for 5 musicians who just watched their old band collapse. The new lineup kept 3 players from Sparrow, Kay on vocals, Goldie McJohn on organ, Jerry Edmonton on drums, and added a 17-year-old guitarist, Michael Monarch, and a bass player, Rushton Morey. 2 singles came and went without a trace. This was the last real shot they had. Meanwhile, across town, a broke staff songwriter named Mars Bonfire had just bought a used Ford Falcon. He was signed to Universal as a staff writer at the time, the kind of job that paid steady but rarely made anyone rich. He drove the Falcon everywhere, into the mountains, out to the desert, along the coast. Somewhere on those drives, the song's opening lines took shape, an invitation to fire up the engine and head out onto the highway. One of those drives caught him in a mountain thunderstorm, pulled over, waiting it out. And the song's most famous phrase, it turns out, didn't come from where you'd expect. Not a subculture, not a genre, a chemistry class. Bonfire reached for the periodic table he'd learned in school and pulled out 2 words that just sounded right together: heavy metal. In his lyric, it described the roar of an engine, nothing more. He couldn't afford an amplifier. When he got evicted for playing too loud, he cut the demo on a borrowed reel-to-reel, singing in a whisper over an unplugged guitar. It was so quiet, he said later, it sounded like a banjo. Publisher after publisher passed. As a last resort, he dropped the tape through the mail slot of his brother's house. His brother was Jerry Edmonton, Steppenwolf's drummer. Days later, the phone rang. The band wanted it. What they did next mattered as much as anything Bonfire had written. In rehearsal, Steppenwolf roughly doubled the tempo. The hushed vocal became a full-throated shout. A driving rhythm guitar and a hard backbeat replaced the folk strum entirely. The song stopped describing motion. It started to move. They cut it at American Recording Company with producer Gabriel Meckler and engineer Richard Podolor. One small accident stuck. Goldie McJohn's organ ran through a beat-up amp with a cracked speaker instead of the studio's Hammond, and that buzz became part of the song's grit. Podolor pushed Kay's vocal hard through a tube microphone to get some grit into it, and ran the bass with a touch of fuzz so it wouldn't disappear under Monarch's guitar. The whole 11-song debut album took about 2 days to record and cost roughly $9,000. A 2-day session that would end up outlasting almost everything else either man ever recorded. A folk ballad about a used car had just become a hard rock landmark. The label wasn't sold on it. Dunhill preferred a different song, Everybody's Next One, a Kay and Meckler co-write for the lead single, a more conventional radio-friendly pop song that fit the label's existing sense of what a hit sounded like. The band and their management wanted Born to be Wild. Neither side would budge, so the label made an unusual call. They pressed both songs onto the same 7-inch record and shipped it to radio stations as a double-sided single, letting programmers decide which side actually deserved airplay. Manager Red Foster had spent years as a DJ himself at KRLA before moving into management, and he still had contacts up and down the dial. He called around, asking old colleagues which side they were spinning. The answer came back fast, and it wasn't close. The gamble paid off unevenly. Born to be Wild ran away with the airplay almost immediately. Everybody's Next One, the label's original pick, the song they had actually wanted to push, quietly vanished into the flip side of history, a footnote nobody remembers today. 1968 was a transitional year for rock radio. FM stations, still a novelty a few years earlier, were starting to program full album sides and longer, harder-edge songs that tight AM formats wouldn't touch. Steppenwolf's record landed right in the middle of that shift, too heavy for some top 40 playlists, exactly right for the freeform stations just finding their voice. The song entered the Billboard Hot 100 on July 7, 1968. By August, it had climbed to number 2, held off the top spot only by the Rascals' People Got to Be Free. It sold over 1 million copies and was certified gold that September. By the time it finally slipped down the chart, it had outsold and outlasted nearly everything else the band would release for years to come. It wasn't an easy hit to place. At 3.5 minutes, with a harder edge than most of what was on Top 40 radio in early 1968, some AM programmers hesitated. So it broke first where the resistance was lower, on the underground FM stations just starting to define themselves by playing whatever they wanted, however long it ran. From there, it crossed back over to AM Top 40, a rare single that worked on both dials at once. In May, the band performed it live on American Bandstand in front of Dick Clark's national television audience, their first real exposure to a coast-to-coast crowd who'd never heard of them a year earlier. And still, at this point, nothing marked the song as anything more than that. A strong number 2 record, one more hit in a crowded year of hits. It was, by any ordinary measure, a career highlight. Nobody involved, not the band, not the label, not Bonfire himself, had any idea what was still to come. July 14th, 1969. A movie theater goes dark. On screen, 2 riders pull their choppers out of a gas station and onto an empty highway. And a song already a year old suddenly sounds brand new, cranked up over the opening credits like it was made for exactly this. Here's how that happened, and why it mattered more than any chart position ever could. Peter Fonda originally wanted Crosby, Stills and Nash to score Easy Rider, a folk rock soundtrack to match the film's counterculture credentials. His editor, Don Camburn, cut the footage against rock records pulled from his own personal collection, purely as placeholders meant to be swapped out once real music was locked in. Dennis Hopper pushed back hard on the CSN plan. The temporary music stayed exactly where it was. The choices that felt right in the editing room that week ended up defining the film's identity forever after. By the time anyone seriously reconsidered, the production ended up spending its entire music budget licensing the songs Cameron had chosen almost by accident. Hopper put it simply years later. He'd cut to the picture, not the music. He wasn't thinking about a hit single. But when Born to Be Wild landed under that opening ride, he knew. "It just worked, man," he said. The image of two riders on the open road, matched to that exact song, fused into one of the most recognizable openings in film history. The soundtrack even layered in the sound of a revving engine right at the start just to sell it further. This is the turn the whole story has been building toward. Before this placement, Born to Be Wild was a good record past its peak, fading off the charts the way every hit eventually does. After it, the song and the film became permanently welded together in the public imagination. Radio had made it a hit. A movie made it permanent. It stopped being just a Steppenwolf single. It became the sound of American freedom, restlessness, and rebellion, on screen, and then everywhere else it played. The scale of it caught even the band off guard. The film carried Steppenwolf into countries they'd never toured, across Europe, into Brazil, and made them the adopted house band of an entire biker subculture they hadn't set out to represent and hadn't asked for. Bonfire remembered exactly when he understood what had happened. Standing at a urinal after a screening, he heard a total stranger singing the song to himself, a man who'd heard it only once in the movie and couldn't get it out of his head. The numbers back up what the culture instinctively knew. Steppenwolf would go on to sell more than 25 million records worldwide over the course of their career, with 8 gold albums and 1 platinum certification in the United States. A scale of success that traces directly back to one placement in one film that nobody planned. Success like that comes with a price tag, and Steppenwolf paid it for the rest of their career. John Kay has called the whole heavy metal thunder, biker band association, a double-edged sword. Flattering at first, suffocating soon after. The press, he's said, tags you once and never looks again, no matter what you do next. Even Kay's dark glasses came from necessity as much as image. He's spoken since about being severely light-sensitive, though the press just saw biker mystique. That one-dimensional image became limiting fast, and it wasn't just a branding problem. Kay later pointed to it as one of the internal arguments that eventually broke the band apart. A genuine creative frustration, not just a marketing complaint. Quieter, more thoughtful material. Songs like the Hoyt Axton penned Snowblind Friend simply didn't fit what audiences now expected from a band they'd decided was about leather, choppers, and not much else. Nowhere was that gap wider than on Monster, their ambitious 1969 concept album taking direct aim at the Vietnam War and the politics of the moment. It was a world away from the leather and chrome image the public had locked onto, and it showed a band capable of far more than one hit had suggested. The label's reported response was blunt. Where's the hit single? It stands as the band's most political record, and by far its least commercial. To this day, most casual fans couldn't name a second Steppenwolf song if you asked them. An entire catalog, reduced to one 3-minute record. Behind the scenes, the lineup was already fracturing under the pressure of it all. Bassist Rushton Morave was fired in 1968 after missing gigs. Guitarist Michael Monarch quit in August of 1969 as his relationship with Kay deteriorated past the point of repair. Bassist Nick St. Nicholas came and went within a year. A grueling contract, 2 albums a year, on top of constant touring, ground everyone down faster than the fame could compensate for it. One departure after another, each one chipping away at the chemistry that had made the original record work in the first place. On February 14th, 1972, Steppenwolf broke up for good, or so it seemed at the time. Los Angeles Mayor Sam Yorty marked the occasion by officially declaring it Steppenwolf Day, a strange, small honor for a band that had just quietly fallen apart. Kay tried a solo career first, releasing a couple of albums under his own name. It didn't take long, though, before Steppenwolf reformed. A 1974 lineup with Kay, Edmonton, and McJohn, plus new guitarist Bobby Cochran. They landed one more top 40 hit, Straight Shootin' Woman, and released 2 more albums before splitting again in 1976, worn down by the same pressures that had ended the band the first time. What followed was messier and stranger. Rival, unauthorized lineups toured under the Steppenwolf name throughout the late 70s, a period Kay has referred to bitterly as the bogus Wolf era, bands trading on a name and a reputation that weren't theirs to use. Fans at the time often couldn't tell which lineup was the real one. Legal battles over who actually owned the name dragged on for years, into the year 2000, before the matter was finally settled. In 1980, Kay reclaimed the name for good, rebuilding it the hard way, night after night, on the club circuit, as John Kay and Steppenwolf, rather than waiting for the big label deals and arena tours to come back on their own. Through all of it, across every lineup and every decade, one thing never changed. Wherever they played, whatever era it was, people came for one song. Kay has described crowds in Argentina, a country the classic lineup never even toured while the hits were fresh, singing every line back to him phonetically, word for word, decades after the fact, having learned it from records alone. It's the clearest proof of what the song did. Carried the band's name to places the band itself never physically reached. For Mars' Bonfire, the money kept coming long after he'd stopped thinking of himself as just a songwriter for hire. By Kay's own estimate, the song alone was worth well over $100,000 a year, every year for decades. The band's final show came on October 14, 2018, in Baxter Springs, Kansas, closing out 50 years on the road, one of the longest continuous touring careers in rock history. Along the way, the band lost 3 of its own. Goldie McJohn died in August of 2017. Jerry Edmonton was killed in a car accident in November of 1993. Producer Gabriel Meckler died in a motorcycle accident in 1977. In 2018, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, an institution that has never once inducted Steppenwolf as a band, inducted Born to Be Wild itself into a brand new category built just for standalone singles, songs important enough to honor on their own. Steven Van Zandt announced the new category himself, calling it a rock and roll jukebox of records by artists the Hall hadn't otherwise recognized. It joined a short list that included Rocket 88, Rumble, and The Twist. The song has since turned up in more than 40 films, shows, and commercials, from Super Bowl spots to sitcom needle drops. Rolling Stone ranked it among the 500 greatest songs ever recorded. It remains, all these decades later, the definitive anthem of the open road, the first song most people would name if you asked them to soundtrack a highway. It also placed 29th on the American Film Institute's list of the best movie songs of all time. Recent Super Bowl commercials from Mercedes and WeatherTech have brought it back into rotation, still selling speed and freedom to a new audience. One myth is worth clearing up before we go. People often say this song named heavy metal. It didn't. It's likely the first rock lyric ever to use that exact phrase. But in context, it was describing a motorcycle, not a music genre. The actual genre name caught on a few years later, coined by rock critics writing about bands like Led Zeppelin. Even Kay waves the credit off, calling Steppenwolf simply a hard rock, blues-based band. Without this one song, Steppenwolf would likely be a forgotten footnote of the late 60s Sunset Strip. Because of it, they became immortal, permanently, inescapably, the band that made Born to Be Wild. As Kay himself put it, the song is like a child who grew up, left home, and only sends the occasional postcard. Proof, in the end, that a song can outgrow even the people who made it. If this gave you a new way to hear this song, like the video and subscribe for more stories from rock's golden age.